Thanks for joining us for this Tuesday afternoon briefing for COVID-19. Sorry this is just a few minutes late. We just got out of City Council and wanted to bring you a few things to your attention. Of course, we'll go over today's numbers. We'll talk about some insights as it relates to testing. We'll talk about the financial update for the city that we haven't. We just got some news we want to share with you. And of course, our regular active coverage. Today's numbers, these are testing numbers since the beginning of March for Forest General, Merritt Health Wesley, Hattiesburg Clinic, and Semri. As of this morning, we've completed 18,813 tests. 1,697 have come back positive, 15,935 negative, and of course right now we have 681 tests which are pending. In the hospital, we have 40 patients between our two hospitals that are positive for COVID. That's down one from yesterday and about 1.5 under our average over the last 14 days. We have 19 patients who are in the ICU between Merritt Health Wesley and Forest General. That's about 3.5 above where we've been the last 2 weeks. And so as we look at this over time, of course, last week we had that real kind of a spike in hospitalizations, got up to some numbers we hadn't seen thus far. That number's continue to fall off, and we hope that number will keep going below 40 and even lower than that. We added 8 cases in Forest County today. Lamar County added 4. Forest County's total now stands at 689. Of course, those are not all active cases. We'll talk about that in a second. Lamar County's at 292, which brings the metro area total to 981. Our 5-day average graph, this is where we take the number of new positive cases, we average it with the 2 days prior and the 2 days after. It's good to see that 5-day average continue to fall. Of course, as some of those pending tests come in, and some of those are kind of laying over from the weekend, you may see that number go back up, but still it's a welcome development to continue to see that 5-day average fall. We also look at the number of cases inside 14 days, and so these are people who have tested positive in the last 2 weeks. Typically, this disease runs its course in 14 days or less unless there's an adverse reaction. So that inside 14-day number is a very rough estimate, but still gives you some indication of how many active cases you may have in your community at a given time. And so right now in Forest County, that's 125. In Lamar County, that number is 54. And if you look at this over the last 2.5 months, you can see that we kind of hit that really high mark about the middle of May, but have continued to see, with some bumps, a steady decline. We're very glad to see Forest County fall under the 150 mark and Lamar County staying around the 50 mark. And so a lot of counties around us are seeing their inside 14-day number up really high right now, so it's good to see ours declining. Because our goals, of course, are to protect vulnerable populations, people over the age of 60, people with underlying or chronic health conditions. We also want to prevent overrun of the healthcare system by slowing the spread, understanding that some of these surrounding communities that are seeing higher number of cases, when they overwhelm their hospitals, they will likely come to our hospitals. And you see that with kind of the makeup of the ICU population right now. And as we reopen, we want to prioritize public health while we give that private sector the space it needs to operate. Our 4 factors that we go back to: widespread availability of testing, which we'll hit on in just a second, the wearing of masks, which we're very big on, as you know, watching our own data, and of course listening to all voices. I wanted to give you some quick testing insights. This week will mark the 1-month mark for having the C.E. Roy Community Center, which is of course at 300 East 5th Street, open for free testing. We've got just over 4 weeks of data in. This is the number of total tests that have been conducted. 239 the week of May 18th, when it went to 163, then 147, 132. So you're seeing the number fall, which is a welcome development in one way, because hopefully fewer people are having those symptoms of cough, fever, trouble breathing, and loss of smell and taste. At the same time, we want to make sure that people know this resource is available. If you're around someone who has had COVID, or if you are experiencing these symptoms yourself, please use this free service. That is why we are offering it. We received a grant from the Department of Health. We're also using some of our CARES Act Community Development Block Grant money to help fund this project as well. So if you have the need, we're open Monday, Wednesday, Friday at C.E. Roy from 8 to 2. Please pass that word along. We want to give a financial update, and this will take just a minute or two. In late April, we shared some sales tax numbers with you. Of course, the city of Hattiesburg runs primarily on sales tax, and we reported there were some shortfalls for the month of March, which we get that check in the middle of May. We start getting the numbers in late April, but in March, about half of the month, we were shut down in a lot of our restaurants and other retail. And so we reported that to you, and we had to make some difficult decisions with the reduction in force, understanding kind of a worst case scenario. Now, I'll give you an example of what happened. So in March, of 2020, of course, we get that check in May, but in March of 2019, rather, we received $2,081,372. Fast forward a year later, and that had dropped to $1,794,311. It's a 13.7% drop. And so when we looked at the numbers we were forecasting out, and when taking into account the number we received, again, if you look at the May 20, that's actually March's sales tax receipts, but we don't get the check until May. So that May number was 13% down. So we were anticipating, since April was the month that Governor Reeves had us under shelter in place, since March was a half a month that produced 13 to 15%, we were assuming that April might produce worst case scenario 30%. Of course, we just got that number today, and so forecasting out a 30% drop in June, July, August, which of course reflect the sales tax months of April, May, and June. We were looking at possibly over $2 million in sales tax loss from year over year, and so. However, this week we did receive better than expected news for sales tax revenues for the month of April. Of course, we just got that check here in the middle of June. And so what we found was April of 2020, of course, just received in June, $1,548,600.91 compared to April's number, which is listed above at $1,884,599. Still a 17.8% drop, but well under the 30% drop we had feared the most. And so now we can kind of rerun those numbers at potential where our sales tax shortfall may be. And you can kind of forecast if April was the worst month because we were under shelter in place and everything for the most part except essential stuff was shut down. There was no in-house dining. There were no non-essential retail. If we factor in the 17.8% drop and say that, hey, if that continues in July and August, which of course reflect May and June's numbers, and even sort of had a slight improvement at the end of the fiscal year, that number drops a good bit. And so kind of just in summary right now, year-to-date budgeted shortfall, of course, we don't budget exactly on what was collected last year. We try to go a little bit more conservatively than that, so in case we have some bumps, we can sort of absorb those. So year-to-date budgeted shortfall, $490,000. The year-to-date, year-over-year shortfall, of course, if we're comparing just to last year, is $548,708. And if that worst-case scenario that I just pointed out to you, even with the improved numbers, we're looking at a $1.48 million shortfall. And so compared to the $2 million we thought, the 1.4 is a welcome development. And of course, when we made those cuts in the reduction in force in late April, that was saving just under $1 million, knowing that we could go to some other places to get some additional, a few $100,000 here and there to try and balance by year's end. And so what does this all mean? Essentially, while we're still seeing shortfalls compared to last year, it's good to see that in the worst case scenario, in the worst month, which was April that we just received, that drop was only 17%. And so what we think this will mean is that we will not have to do any more reductions in force if things continue in this way. And we hope that the worst case scenario, even under the improved plan, continues to get better and we see our numbers start to trend upwards. Because again, sales tax is a big part of the Hattiesburg economy. And all those numbers I just showed you were just sales tax figures in terms of shortfalls. So with all that said, we'll go quickly to the act of courage. I do want to recognize two neighborhood associations, Friends of 40th Avenue and the Kensington Woods Neighborhood Association. Today they donated some garbage cans for the Timms Elementary Playground and the Timms Track. Of course, those facilities are well used by a lot of people in the Midtown area and these neighborhood associations. In an effort to keep that park beautiful, in an effort to keep our city looking good, donated some very kind of high-end trash cans to that park around Timms, and we know they will be used. We appreciate these neighborhood associations leading from the front and raising the money and getting those donated. So as we go into the rest of this Tuesday and into the week, remember to wash your hands, take care of yourself mentally and physically. Please wear a mask if you go out in public. Do only what is essential, and remember, you're safer at home. Have a great rest of the evening.